So today we're going to talk about EQ, and I personally think that this is one of the most important things to understand as a producer. EQ I've been aware of since I started in the 90s, and obviously technology's moved on, and now we've got so many different types of EQ available to us. Is this actually showing on the screen, by the way?
Yep.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do here is work with Ableton, and I'm going to use EQ. Say that again?
You're bored.
Sorry, I can't hear you. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of different EQs on the market. I personally prefer, and this stems from my original productions. I had a mixing desk, but I also had a spectrum analyzer. This is in the 90s, and I found it incredibly useful. Nowadays, you have EQs that have built-in spectrum analyzers. If you don't know what a spectrum analyzer is, you're about to find out. It basically lets you visualize what's happening over the EQ spectrum. So I'm going to pull in the plugin that I'm going to be using a lot here. It's called FabFilter. And let me delete the MIDI. I'm going to just, you know.
Is your favorite one on the market?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Jason.
I love them. Yeah. All the FabFilter stuff. It's so easy to shape things visually.
Yeah.
And you see exactly what the signal that's coming through.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, back in the day, using a desk, and when I didn't have a spectrum, I mean, I only had like there was only 12 bands of spectrum analysis available to me on this unit that I had. But I used to sit there tweaking like hi-hats, and this is before I had a spectrum analyzer. I'd be tweaking and I'd be like, I wasn't quite sure whether it was right or whether there was a resonant frequency. It was very, very difficult to understand what was happening. And if I open this up and I'll just show you, I'm going to put a sound through it actually first. So let me get a kick drum up. I'm going to use, I've got a variety of plugins I could use here for a kick drum. But let me use Microtonic, because I heard that name mentioned before. Microtonic is a kick synth. You've got to put a note in, of course, for the kick to sound. So this is actually a very small screen, so please excuse me if I'm having to move things about. I'm going to put the note in. I'll shut this down and you can see what's going on. So I put the note in. I'm going to move it to 1 bar. And before I press play on this clip, I'm going to make sure that those 2 icons are checked and it says stop at the bottom of the Microtonic. That's just the way this plugin works. So if I just turn this up, in fact, you know what, I don't like turning things up on the channel. I'd rather look on the synth and see if I can turn it up that way. And we've got that bang on 0 there, or near enough 0. And just to give myself a little bit of headroom, I'll take the master down to -6.
That's the synth that corresponds to the pocket operator that I have.
Yeah, that's what I heard you mention it. So so this is it's a percussion synth, but I particularly use it for kick drums that are quite hard sounding. There's another really good plugin, if you want to make a note of it, called Kick 2. I won't go through that today, but a lot of people use Kick 2 as well. But for me, when I'm doing something that's particularly hard, techno-orientated or dark techno-orientated, the Microtonic is a really good place to start. So, seeing as though this is about EQ, I'm not going to go in depth on that. I'm going to open up the FabFilter, and I'm going to play the kick drum. Now, let me just come right here and just show you exactly what's happening. So we have the frequency spectrum. This is the spectrum analyzer, so you can see what's going on throughout the frequencies. Now, this is the lowest frequency, which is 20 hertz, and this is the highest frequency, which is 20,000 hertz. Now, the human ear can hear up to 17,000 hertz. So,
17 or 70?
17,000, so 17K. And to stop yourself having to put 3 noughts on everything, we usually say 17 kilohertz. So I can actually prove that this is the case if I put an auto filter just in front. So this is a filter that you were using on your demonstration, which obviously makes things lower and higher. And if we'd have put an LFO on that, it would effectively have been doing that. Now, if I take this to a high pass, and we go all the way up, I mean, it's not very loud, but as you can see, the higher we go, the more you can't hear it. I'm going to make it very resonant. And we're going up to, can you hear? That's maybe 15 kilohertz there. You just can't hear anything. So the information above 17 kilohertz is actually completely useless. And when you start adding things like compression and you get more involved with plugins, the frequencies at the top end can really add up and create anti-aliasing, all sorts of things which, again, are irrelevant to this particular tutorial. But be aware, these frequencies at the top are really nasty and you don't need them. So if we take this down, what I tend to do on a lot of tracks, if I come back up here, the kick drum, fundamental of the kick drum, is this frequency here, which is about 50 hertz. And that's the real sub of the kick drum. So let me just get that so you can hear that sub. And I'm going to emphasize that frequency. That's that frequency. 50 hertz. And 50 hertz on a piano keyboard is around about G. Now, this, I think, I haven't used it yet on this, but because I kind of... Can you see there's a piano keyboard at the bottom? Right, this frequency, if you take this fundamental of the frequency, this is the note that you perceive this sound to be. And if you take it all the way down, and it's kind of somewhere around G sharp, something like that. Can you see this information that's down the bottom here? This is completely useless. You can't hear it. It's going to affect any compression that happens. So we need to get rid of it on this kick drum. It's good that I'm starting with the kick drum because this is the lowest sound that we're going to get. Every other sound that we use that is not a kick and does not require sub, we're going to roll off these bottom frequencies. So we give this particular sound, this sub sound, space to really breathe. And this is actually the power. This is the really important thing to know about dance music. Is the kick sub needs to be really defined, and any sub bass that's happening alongside the kick sub needs to be really defined as well. And we have to make space. Only that note can only be hitting at that point one time of that sound. No other sound can conflict with it, or things get unstable. So I'm going to take the bottom out of this. Now I could do that on the auto filter there, which I've done. You can see the bottom is out of that now. Or I can actually do it on FabFilter, which is what I'll do. So I'm going to do something called a low cut filter. And I'm going to just increase the roll off slightly. And let's just have a look at what that looks like. Yeah, you can see the actual transparent bit in the background is how it was, and this is how it is. Now, this is now a very stable kick drum. And we've got other frequencies on the top of the kick drum that are going to make it sound a certain way. So I'm going to actually increase these frequencies so you can kind of hear what they are. With this FabFilter Pro Q, I can actually, if I increase the Q, I can listen to exactly what this frequency is. And all these frequencies are shaping what this sound sounds like. So of course that frequency there, it's not sub, but it's adding so much character to this kick drum. So if I want to bring that frequency out, I can. I think that's the maximum volume. If I want to make the kick drum sound that way, I can. But for now, I'm going to leave it. Often you'll go back when you've made your track and you'll think, oh, the kit could just do with a little bit more of a frequency in a certain kind of area because there's maybe a frequency missing in the track that you've made. And this is where EQ comes in really, really powerful, because on the master, I always put another EQ plugin. So if I get my another FabFilter, and I pull down the Q3, a perfect track, when you've made it, the perfect track that sonically is brilliant. You're laughing? Yeah. Right, what you want to see on this, and actually, I'm going to show you something quickly before I put this out. It's very important, the tilt on this plugin, and if I click here, we've got resolution maximum. I always have it on maximum. Speed very fast. If I put this down to very slow, you can see it's. I like to see it fast, so we'll put it on fast, or yeah, let's do it on very fast for now. Resolution would be low. Well, I can't see anything, so what's the point in that? So we'll put that on maximum. But the tilt, very important. So what it's doing is you've got your curve of your frequencies, and it's actually tilting it up or down. What I tend to do is have this on 1.5, and when I have this on 1.5, what it means, and I've analysed so many different tracks, what it means, if you have this on 1.5, when you see your finished track, literally, it's going to be bang on the line all the way over there, and then it's going to go down at 17 kilohertz. So that's a really good way to tell whether you've actually got your frequencies right on your track by putting something like that on the master, keeping your eye always on making sure that no sound whatsoever goes over this line at this point. At this point here, it's okay to have things going up like this. This frequency might scare me a little bit. I might want to take that down if this was like the full track, just a slight bit. But this is when it gets to being absolutely perfect with your frequencies, and you know you've got the perfect track. Then it's time to get absolutely spot on with it.
How high is that master channel? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Speaking of the master channel, putting this on, we need to make sure it's not going over.
To make sure it's not
the individual sound per se.
Well, yes, actually, because it's a combination of them. So with, let's say I was EQing a hi-hat. Well, of course, we wouldn't have all these frequencies down here. Well, we might have, but we'd have to take them away because a hi-hat is high frequencies. It's nothing to do with low frequencies. And you would make sure on the hi-hat channel that nothing went over this point here. There'd be nothing over that point. And then when you start adding all the channels together, you then look at your master and you kind of balance things correctly with what kind of frequency that sound is. So I'll put another sound on this. I'll put another few sounds on it, and then we can start to really see how this is going to work in principle.
Mark, a quick question. How high is it okay for the kick to go? You said it can go above the line, like +6, +9, +12.
Oh, okay, so the fundamental of the kick, which is the lowest frequency at 50 hertz.
Yeah, how high can that go and still be a good?
Well, that's the age-old question. At the end of the day, you've got to use your ears, right? But then again, you might have an acoustic environment which is absolutely rubbish. So I think, yes, it's good to use this as a guide. I personally never have it more than 3 on there.
3 bars up.
3 bars up.
9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I was doing some mastering. I do mastering as well, and the other day, and someone had taken the kick drum all the way to there, but because of the nature of the track, it just sounded a little bit too subby. So I took it down to there, and it sounded fine. So, you know, there's no hard, fast rules, but it's a general rule. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to put a sub-bass line in. But because I'm useless at piano, I'm going to use a step sequencer to drive my sub-bass line and also the melody that I'm going to use on the synth. So for now, what I'll do here is I'll pull in a MIDI effect called, let me see which one I could use. mono sequencer. This is a very easy one to explain. I'm actually covering a lot of different things here, which is good. So, this is the sequence. Don't worry too much about this being too complicated. Remember, it's the EQ that we need to be worrying about here. I'm going to pull in a sub-bass generator. Now, on Ableton, Operator is a fantastic sub-bass generator. Sub-bass is just basically a sine wave, or perhaps a triangle wave with a filter on it, that gives a really low sound at maybe 50 hertz or even the octave above. So I'm going to drive this sequence. It's very small, I can't see what's happening here. I'm going to drive the sub-bass sequence. If I put my inputs and outputs, I'm going to take on the operator the MIDI from the mono sequencer. Right, now, that's just a simple sine wave. I'm going to change the notes on the mono sequencer because, like I say, I can't be bothered to put the notes in on the grid. I'm going to take the steps down because this is another thing with sub-bass. The faster the sub-bass and the less bars and beats the sub-bass, the more harder the track. The longer the bars and the beats, the more funky the track is. That's quite a hard microtonic kick drum, so I'm going to keep this sub-bass pattern underneath. Maybe just to 8, steps 8. I'm going to have to put that in myself there. Now, obviously that doesn't sound like sub-bass at the moment to you guys. I just need to press sync. But I'm going to take it down an octave. Now let me put on the master the FabFilter, That's the frequency of what you're just hearing. So if the kick drum fundamental was down at 50 hertz, you know, there's no way that's going to interact with this really important frequency here. I could probably take that down an octave and I'm still not going to get any interaction with the sub of the kick. So let me take that down an octave. So if I click on the sequence, here we go. I really should name this, it makes it a lot easier. Take this down. I really would love to turn this up for you. I love sub-bass, it's great. Yeah, so we're still not conflicting with the kick drum, but we're looking at those frequencies and we're thinking, well, when we put that with the kick drum, you know, will we be able to hear that sub? Has the kick drum got those peaks on the kick drum, and can we possibly notch out some of the kick drum to accommodate that frequency? So let me put the kick drum in. Now straight away, I mean, I'm not in a studio and I can tell straight away that that sub-bass is way too loud. Remember, it's not sub-bass, it's the octave above the sub-bass, but that's actually, when a lot of people say sub-bass, it's not actually sub-bass, it's the octave above. I mean, if you'd heard that, there's a possibility that you would have said that was a sub-bass line. But it's not a sub-bass line, it's the octave above. And you can put it the octave below, but you're really not going to hear it. So let me put it the octave below. And now you can see the sub-bass is in this region here. Again, you can kind of hear it, but when that kick drum hits on the beat, there's also a note coming from the sub-bass line in that frequency, which is going to add to the 50 hertz frequency, which is going to make things completely unstable. You could actually get rid of that problem by side chaining, so that when the kick came in, the volume level of that frequency on the sub-bass was reduced. I hope I'm not going too advanced here. Is everybody keeping up with me?
That's great.
Good. So, yeah. So let me think that there's the problem. That bottom note of the sub is going to conflict with that kick drum when it comes in. So again, we're off on a tangent. Let's sidechain compress it. In fact, I'm not going to go into sidechain compression because I'll be here for another 3 hours with you. But there is a technique called volume shaping, and a particularly great plugin for this is called LFO tool. And so this is the volume over time. So if you look, you can see the line going across. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The kick drum would be there. 1, 1, 1, 1.
Is that on the kick or the sub?
So this is on the sub.
This is on the sub, okay.
So if I take that volume down there, when that kick hits, you're not going to get that frequency on the bottom of the sub bass line. So we're not going to get any conflict. So I'll take that down. Can you hear that kind of sidechain technique? Maybe I'll just add, we are on sub bass here, so maybe I'll add another part of the sound. You can hear it's almost breathing. So the really important thing when I'm now mixing the kick in, I've got to hear that 50 hertz part of the kick. That's so, so important. So let me take the volume level of the kick down. Let's look at the master, and this is how I'm kind of going to get things right now. So, like I said, nothing goes over the line there. This is kind of okay, but goodness me, we've got to watch this bottom of the kick here when we bring it in. So let's bring it in. Can you see that bottom frequency is like really hitting prominently? If I took the sidechain technique off, watch that 50 hertz bit of the kick, and watch how unstable it all gets. It's like, it's almost flanges itself. And if you're on a club system, and everybody's there, and they're like, whoa, you know, let's get that sub bass, and it's not hitting constantly. So that's a really important technique on kick and bass. So let me put that LFO tool back in. And we've still got that deepness to the track going on. And I'm going to put in a sound now. So if I put a MIDI track in, and what sound should we put in? Well, Chad, you know this. This is my favourite synth at the moment. Thorn. It's so good for bass. Now, and this is another thing. So I said this is so good for bass. We're going to put a bass synth in. Now, when I say bass synth, I don't mean sub bass and bass synth. We've already made the sub bass, and it's already really, really stable. So we're going to use a bass synth that gives the perception of it's a bass line or it's a bass synth, but it's actually not. But it'll still sound like one. And the way I'm going to make sure that nothing conflicts at all whatsoever with the work that we've just made, if I put in another FabFilter, and I pull that down. Again, I'm going to drive this sequence with the notes. So it's so small, this screen. MIDI from the sequence, monitor in, and then if I think I'm on the wrong sequence there. Right, so I have to record the notes from, where are we? Operator. Okay, I'm not going to record the notes from that. Right, okay, so we will just put some notes in. Gosh, you guys make me work hard. Okay, so let's put these notes in. Obviously that's not in the bass region, and it's probably out of tune, but I'm just showing you the principle. Maybe a bit low. kind of like the positioning of where that is. But you can hear lots and lots of things conflicting underneath. So if I get this FabFilter Pro Q, have a look at what those notes are saying. So these notes at the bottom here, absolute rubbish. We've already made that part. I don't need them there. So let's cut that out. Cut those parts out. And I could do that with the FabFilter. I've just got a tendency to reach for the EQ8 on this a lot of the time when I'm actually doing quick cuts. So pull that down. Not a low shelf, a low cut. So even though, I mean, it didn't sound as bassy as it was, but the perception is this is a bass line. It's completely actually. Yeah, okay, I need to bring. And I'm going to just change the sound just because that's the most boring sound in the world, that in its sound. Everything's really high there in volume. And again, a way that we're going to check whether this is the correct volume level is we're going to go back to our EQ plugin, and I'm going to turn that down, and then we're gradually going to bring it back in so nothing goes over the line. Right, so we've got the kick now, we've got the sub, we've got a kind of a bass line. Again, you can do this with other sounds, but you make sure you put those sounds where they need to be in the frequency spectrum. So let's say it was a bell sound. Well, you wouldn't want any bottom frequencies on it, so you need to cut the bottom frequencies out. And you usually cut the bottom frequencies out where the fundamental of the sound is. So that's the actual bottom note, which gives you the perception of what that sound is. Just like with the kick drum, I cut out everything below the fundamental, so it didn't conflict with anything. That's exactly what you do with every single sound that you bring in. So really, just as the finale to this amazing top-selling track that we're going to make, I'm going to put in a hi-hat, and I'll show you the principle with a hi-hat, although this is actually can be quite complex depending on what hi-hat you use. Now, I do use samples sometimes, but my main sounds, such as closed hi-hats, rides, are always taken from a MIDI synth. Because the sound is cleaner, it's unprocessed, and obviously if someone else has given you a sample and they've processed that sample, then if, let's say, they put a bit of distortion on it and you wanted to take that distortion off, you couldn't do anything about it. So the best way with your prominent main sounds is to use MIDI synths. So if I go to drum and I use for 909 sounds, I use this Drumazone. And if I just close this up, I'm going to click play and put this where the hi-hat's supposed to be. And I've got to find the hi-hat. Wherever it is. That's it. Okay, good. And again, turn it up on the synth rather than the channel. The reason why I always try and turn things up on the synth is because, let's say, down the line, I wanted to increase the volume. If I've already maxed out the volume, the slider on the channel, well, I can't go any further. So I prefer to have a little bit of space to work with. So let's have a look what's happening on this particular sound. FabFilter. Yes. Q3. Right, now this is where people don't get, people realize, I've worked with so many producers and I'm shocked at how many people don't understand the importance of EQ, right? Like, what is that doing there? I mean, what's that got to do with the hi-hat? So that all needs to come off. That there is a bit scary. That's a very resonant peak. However, it's not going over the line, so it's probably going to be okay. We're going to have to check, but be very aware of these little peaks here. These two are going over the line. You're getting very nitpicky when you're talking about these two little ones here, but that's the nature of production. You've got to be bloody good at what you do. You've got to be meticulous about what you do. So, first things first, let's cut all that rubbish out. And we'll put a low cut. Can you see, by cutting it out, I've not made a blind bit of difference to the sound. Look, there's nothing there. It's pointless. And all of that stuff at the bottom is going to be affecting the bottom of the kick drum, because it's all going to be adding to the bottom, to the 50 hertz frequency, which then muddies up your kick drum. And then also means that any compression you apply to your master is going to be affected by when the hi-hat sounds, which is, when you're mastering, it's really, you want it to be affected by the kick drum. So, yeah, you know, this is completely pointless, this bottom stuff. So I've kind of got something decent there. I'm thinking to myself, right, you know what, I might want a bit of control over that frequency there. So I'm hovering over, I'm going to double click, I'm going to increase the Q, I'm going to take the gain down. So, if I leave my mouse over it, I've got rid of that frequency there. And I said about these top two frequencies, so I might just take that down like that, and I might just take that down like, you put your mouse over the bottom of it, you leave it there, you let it turn purple, which it does when it decides it wants to do it, and then pull it down. So let's put this hi-hat into our track. And so this is the final bit before we all buy a Mercedes-Benz with the money we've made from the track. Right, so that's the master. So that means I can turn that hi-hat up. But watch what happens when I'm turning the hi-hat up. That frequency there really is getting to be a bit of a problem. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to put my mouse over here. When it decides it wants to do it. And I'm just going to turn that frequency down a touch. You know, we're starting to shape something now that could actually, you know, once we put more elements in there and we're very aware of what is happening with the EQ spectrum, we're going to get a very full track. You know, obviously we know that something needs to fill out this space in the last half there. If we put any more drums in, just be aware that we don't want them overpowering the hi-hats and the levels of the frequency of the highs that we made. So yeah, I mean, that's it. That's my little lesson on EQ. Any questions? Any questions, anyone?
So, like for a lot of just hardware and stuff, like 26-band or 10-band EQs or whatever, what is this effectively? Like, how is this like 17,000 bands?
Yes.
That
What's
Well,
what's the term for it? Parametric.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's completely adjustable.
Well, I mean, this is insane, the power of this. When I was doing this in the 90s, I had literally 12 LEDs going like that. And now you can do this. And one thing actually, just for those advanced people, really advanced people amongst you, I've been really looking into spectral dynamics recently. And what that is EQ on steroids, which is basically compressing every single band a different way. 20,000 compressors. Which is a very powerful technique. Look into it if you don't know it. It's a very powerful technique.
Do you ever boost EQ?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If you believe in a short strip, always cutting and never boosting?
Yeah, did you notice how I was never actually boosting it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the other question I had was, you know, as we're cutting the frequencies that we're not hearing on the low end. Do you also do that on anything that's above 17K?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very quick, dirty thing there, but when I'm meticulous, I can spend literally 20 minutes making a track. I've got it down to 20 minutes, track's done. But EQ, 4 hours, 5 hours.
And you usually structure like your build of a track the way you kind of went through today, like starting with the kick drum, moving to the higher frequencies, or do you go about it a different way, typically? What do you think?
That's tough.
Yeah, I mean,
Sometimes you might start with a melody or something, and then go.
yeah, it depends how you're feeling inspired on the day of creation. I see it as very different processes. I see the creation process as let's sit down and just rock it, and then you go back and it's like, oh god, I made a right cut, but then I EQ it right, and then once it's EQ'd to absolute perfection where it's bang on the line, then it's off to mastering.
Okay.
I always put in some bullshit kick, I'm just not worried about the kick yet, and start building some stuff around it, melodies or bass lines.
Yeah.
And then once I get a little bit, then I go back and make the kick what it needs to be to match to sound good with what I.
Yeah, so let me rephrase the question. You go through, you make your track in 20 minutes or whatever, you get the idea down, you sketch down or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to go through the EQ process, do you start with the kick and then build up, or do you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, definitely.
You go, so obviously we're working together a lot.
Yes.
So first off, I will say that even if you don't get super nerdy on this stuff, if you even just make simple ballpark cuts, your stuff's gonna sound way better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm showing you totally like geek. I'm a geek, so that's what I do.
I think we all are, that's probably.
Yeah.
We're in a synth form.
Do you want to be a good producer, or do you want to be the best producer? And I think that's what I was trying to. I think yes, of course you could be that way.
Do you, like I do, so I kind of mix as I go.
Yeah.
Not like super intricate, but at least the rough cuts. Do you do that as you go, or do you make a bunch of stuff and then go back and EQ?
Well, recently it's crazy, but recently I've just been making the track in my living room on my laptop with no speakers, just the speakers from here, doing the track, and then it's down to the studio, EQ it, get it perfect.
Yeah, so that's a preference.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to be too crazy about this at the minute. If you know you're a beginner, please don't think that to get. You're exactly right, Chad. You don't have to do it to this extent.
Just cut your low.
Cut the lows.
Even if all you do is cut the lows that you don't need in the hi-hat.
And make sure,
vice versa.
put this on your master.
And that's for any kind of.
Just make sure it's generally okay.
It's gonna sound a lot.
Way better.
Just
Way better.
taking 20 minutes to do that.
Yeah. Yes.
I just want to say, besides, cleaning up the sound, making it less muddy with the EQ, you're also saving CPU processing power when you go in and throw in the compression on later, right?
Because you're going to work it like crazy. And there's just so much going on bottom end.
It has less to process, basically.
Yeah.
don't
It's
it?
basically what you're doing to prevent that from happening in the club to the subwoofers that are, physical things that are moving. And if you have all that low end, it's gonna.
Instead of it being or with a kind of a rhythm to it, because there's so many elements that have that frequency, it'd be like it's not punchy.
Yeah.
Wubby. Be wubby.
Be wobbly.
Are there other FabFilter plugins that you like?
Yeah, definitely.
And are they all EQ or do they make?
No, they make. In fact, highly recommend the whole suite.
Yeah,
I mean,
what is it, Saturn? That's a great one.
good
Amazing,
instruction.
Saturn. So, just have we still got this on the screen? I didn't look.
Yeah.
Saturn, distortion, multiband. So you can create different bands. So let's say that's that band. Again, now you know about spectrum analyzers if you didn't know before, and you know about frequencies. This kind of band is low to mid. And then you could just push the frequency, you could push the distortion and the drive just on that specific band. Saturn is great. FabFilter Pro L2 is a great little limiter. not the one I use all the time, but it's good, and I used it before I got my UAD stuff. So I got that. What else have we got? Timeless is good for a delay. So I find it a little bit confusing, but it's got good sound to it, good delays. You just have to learn about these kind of cross feedbacks. I think if I hover over that, it says cross feedback, which again, I'm not going to go into that today, but it might confuse you if you're a beginner. And what other one would I use? I mean, there's the multi-band compressor. Again, choose your frequency, attack, release, threshold. I again use UAD for multi-band. Yeah.
I have a question about multi-band. Do you, like, that's one thing I've always wondered, because basically a multi-band compressor is going to dip a certain frequency.
Yeah.
But I guess, what's the advantage of that over EQ? Like, I guess preserve some dynamics, or that's one thing I've never really kind of.
Yeah, I think multiband is one of the hardest things I've ever had.
Yeah.
Really hard. You first of all have to understand compression entirely. I wouldn't even look at multiband compression unless you really, really, really understand what compression is. I mean, I do courses on compression that last 5 weeks, and we talk about the different types of compressors. All different types of compressors work differently, and therefore you've got to know that if you want to really know how to operate a compressor. Multiband is several compressors, so then that adds to the complication, which is just even more crazy. So, back to your question, when would I use? When
would you say like, EQ is not enough? I should maybe use a multi-band compressor or something.
When things aren't pumping right.
Okay.
When things, let's say, if we're talking about sub again, and I'm going, it's going, but let's say it was going, like really high volume, but I wanted to smooth it to go just in that frequency.
Gotcha.
Then I would reach for a multiband compressor. And if let's say in the high frequencies I had a closed hi-hat and an open hi-hat, and this is in mastering, because I can't go back into someone's project, and maybe the hi-hat, the closed hi-hat, was just a bit louder than the open hi-hat at a certain frequency. I could smooth that out by compressing that band.
Cool.
Yes. So that's it. Any other questions whilst I'm here? No? Well, good. Thank you very much, everyone.